France has evacuated more than 14,000 people threatened by wildfires in the southwest, as fires also spread in Spain, Croatia and Greece. Authorities in France's Gironde, a popular tourist region, have evacuated guards from campsites the tourists left earlier. Fires have spread in the Testi de Buc and Landiras areas. In southern Spain, more than 3,200 people fled fires in the Mijas Hills, though later some were able to return. Portugal's fires are contained for now. However, the Portuguese authorities say at least 238 people have died from the heat over the past week. The Mijas fires in Spain are not far from Malaga, a popular tourist area. Elsewhere in Spain, wildfires have broken out in the provinces of Castilla y León and Galicia. Ellen McCurdy, living in the Malaga area, told Reuters, "We just grabbed a few essentials and just ran really, and by that stage everybody along the street was on the move. There were a lot of ambulances and fire engines." Across the Mediterranean, from Morocco in the west to Crete in the east, thousands of firefighters and many waterbombing aircraft have been deployed. Since Tuesday, the whole region has been sweltering in severe heat, leaving vegetation bone dry. Heatwaves have become more frequent, more intense, and last longer because of human-induced climate change. The world has already warmed by about 1.1 C since the industrial era began, and temperatures will keep rising unless governments around the world make steep cuts to carbon emissions. The French Weather Service has forecast temperatures of up to 41 C, 106 F, in the country's south on Sunday, and new heat records are predicted for Monday. In Portugal, the temperature recently reached 47 C. In the UK there is an amber warning for extreme heat, as the country braces for record temperatures on Monday and Tuesday, possibly reaching 41 C in some parts. Amber heat warning in UK as temperatures soar. Drive Eunice Lowe, a climate scientist at Bristol University, told the BBC that rising temperatures are a signature of climate change, and that in the UK, 2,000 extra deaths a year were attributable to heatwaves. Public records show that since 1884, the top 10 hottest years in the UK have all been since 2002, she said. Globally, heatwaves are becoming more common and lasting longer, Dr. Lowe added. We need to stop burning fossil fuels, and act now and quickly. Morocco has ordered more than 1,300 people to leave their homes and deployed more firefighters to tackle forest blazes in the north. The worst hit area is Larachi province. In Crete, Greek firefighters are battling blazes in the hills around Rethymno, on the north coast. Some areas in southwest Turkey and on Croatia's Adriatic coast are also struggling with wildfires. A number broke out near Croatia's resort towns of Zadar and Šibenik, but they have not forced any major evacuations. Late on Saturday, France placed 22 more regional departments, mostly along its Atlantic coast, on high orange alert. One resident in southwest France described the forest fires as feeling post-apocalyptic. Fires have burned 10,500 hectares of land there, and Interior Minister Gerald Darmanin praised firefighters' remarkable courage. Everything went so fast. The fire too was big, big, big. Manon Jacquard, 27, told the BBC. She was evacuated from the campsite she works at early on Wednesday morning, and slept at a shelter near Testi de Buc where hundreds of other people also sheltered from the danger. I'm just worried. I'm afraid. I'm trying to be as strong as I can, but I'm not okay. I want to forget this week, she said. Meanwhile, climbers in the Alps are being urged to postpone their trips to Mont Blanc due to the risk of rock falls caused by exceptional climatic conditions. Heatwaves put the public at greater risk of heatstroke, heat exhaustion and drowning, as people rush to cool off, Dr. Lowe said. Pets and farm animals are also vulnerable. Even fit and healthy people are at risk, she said, though the most vulnerable are young children, the elderly and those with underlying health conditions. Extreme heat can also damage infrastructure, such as melting road tarmac and buckling railway lines. In Portugal, fires have destroyed 30,000 hectares, 75,000 acres, of land this year. Mainly in the north. That is the worst fire damage since the summer of 2017, when devastating fires killed some 100 people. As per new reports, Elon Musk recently, but before pulling out of the deal, sent a text to Twitter CEO Parag Agrawal on June 28, informing him that the company's lawyers were trying to cause trouble. Washington. The dispute between Tesla CEO Elon Musk and Twitter is taking many twists and turns. As per new reports, Elon Musk recently, but before pulling out of the deal, sent a text to Twitter CEO Parag Agrawal on June 28, informing him that the company's lawyers were trying to cause trouble, after they sought information on the financial details that Musk was planning to complete the acquisition of Twitter. Your lawyers are using these conversations to cause trouble. That needs to stop, Musk's text reportedly read. Musk sent the particular message after Twitter asked Musk how he would finance the Twitter deal. A few days ago, Twitter sued Musk after he decided to back out of the $44 billion takeover deal. As per The Verge, the lawsuit was filed in Delaware's Court of Chancery on Tuesday, accusing Musk of hypocrisy. Twitter brings this action to enjoin Musk from further breaches, to compel Musk to fulfill his legal obligations and to compel consummation of the merger upon satisfaction of the few outstanding conditions, Twitter wrote in the lawsuit. The lawsuit marks the beginning of what could be a protracted legal battle as Twitter seeks to hold Musk to his deal to pay $54.20 per share for the company. Twitter, which is being repped by M&A powerhouse law firm Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen & Katz, alleged that Musk looked for an escape from the deal, which required a material adverse effect or breach of contract. Musk had to try to conjure one of those, the lawsuit stated. Musk announced the termination of the Twitter purchase deal in a letter sent by Musk's team to Twitter earlier this month. Musk decided to suspend the deal due to multiple breaches of the purchase agreement. In April, Musk reached an acquisition agreement with Twitter at $54.20 per share in a transaction valued at approximately $44 billion. However, Musk put the deal on hold in May to allow his team to review the veracity of Twitter's claim that less than 5% of accounts on the platform are bots or spam. Back in June, Musk had openly accused the microblogging website of breaching the merger agreement and threatened to walk away and call off the acquisition of the social media company for not providing the data he has requested on spam and fake accounts. Musk alleged that Twitter is actively resisting and thwarting his information rights, as outlined by the deal, CNN reported, citing the letter he sent to Twitter's head of legal, policy and trust, Vijaya Gadde. Musk demanded that Twitter turn over information about its testing methodologies to support its claims that bots and fake accounts constitute less than 5% of the platform's active user base, a figure the company has consistently stated for years in boilerplate public disclosures. A 40-year-old British man has been found dead at a hotel in Florence, local media have reported. The man was found by hotel staff on Saturday morning alongside a seriously injured 43-year-old woman, thought to be his partner. The woman is being treated at the Italian city's Careggi hospital. The pair were staying at the four-star Hotel Continentale, in the historic center of Florence. Having reportedly arrived in the city on Friday night, Local police and forensic teams were seen at the hotel on Saturday, after staff alerted the police. A foreign Commonwealth and Development Office (FCDO) spokesperson said, "We are in touch with the Italian police following the death of a British man in Florence. One of Hollywood's beautiful couples, Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward, is celebrated in The Last Movie Stars docuseries." The upcoming 6-part series explored one of Hollywood's most enduring marriages. Director Ethan Hawke's HBO Max original delivered a rare and exclusive look at the careers of both actors and a complex 50-year relationship that ultimately managed to beat incredible odds, according to Deadline. The couple's iconic relationship seems to be that of a Hollywood script. They met in 1953 while working as understudies in the successful Broadway play, Picnic. Despite Newman's marriage to Jackie Witt, he and Woodward got on very well and were attracted to one another. After meeting Woodward, he reportedly said, "Geez, what an extraordinarily pretty girl." Woodward found him very good-looking, and did not like him right away, but she couldn't resist him. According to IMDb, they married on January 29, 1958. Many people praised the couple's ability to balance their work and life. They raised 3 children, Nell, Melissa, and Claire Olivia. The couple was known for their political and charity involvement, including the creation of Newman's Own, the famous salad dressing, which directs all of its contributions to charity. According to People magazine, Newman and Woodward remained together until he passed away on September 28, 2008. The Last Movie Stars producers compiled this unique docuseries with film clips, archival interviews, transcripts, and more. George Clooney as Newman, Laura Linney as Woodward. Other actors in the series include Brooks Ashmanskas, Bobby Cannavale, Billy Crudup, Josh Hamilton, Zoe Kazan, Sam Rockwell, and Steve Zahn. The HBO Max exclusive docuseries will drop on July 21, 2022. Although some regions now have 2 subscription tiers, The Last Movie Stars will be available on both. A cargo plane which crashed in northern Greece was carrying 11 tons of weapons, including landmines, to Bangladesh, officials say. People living within 2 kilometers of the site where the Antonov 12 came down have been warned to stay indoors. The aircraft was flying from Serbia to Jordan when it crashed late on Saturday close to the city of Kavala, killing all 8 people on board. Eyewitness video showed the plane on fire and a huge fireball as it crashed. Drones were used to survey the site of the wreckage out of caution, while Greek state-run TV reported the army. Explosives experts and Greek Atomic Energy Commission staff were not approaching the site until it was deemed safe. The air measurements at the moment have not shown anything, but nonetheless instability in the field was observed. Lieutenant General Marios Apostolidis, of the Northern Greece Fire Brigade, told reporters. In other words, intense smoke and heat, as well as a white substance that we do not recognize. So a special armed forces team has to inform us what it is and whether we can enter the field. The pilot had reportedly requested an emergency landing at Kavala Airport in Greece due to an engine problem shortly after takeoff, but was unable to reach the runway. The plane was noticed at about 22:45 local time, 1945 Greenwich Mean Time, by residents. Emilia Saptonova, who saw the plane come down, said she was amazed it hadn't crashed into their homes. It was full of smoke, it had a noise I can't describe, and it went over the mountain. She said. It passed the mountain and turned and crashed into the fields. There were flames, we were scared. A lot of cars came, but they couldn't approach because there were continuous explosions. Serbia's defense minister Nebojša Stefanović said that the plane was transporting almost 11 tons, 11,000 kilograms, of Serbian-made weapons to Bangladesh. But there are conflicting reports of what kinds of weapons were on board. Mr. Stefanović said it had included illuminating mortar mines and training mines, adding that the flight had all necessary permissions in accordance with international regulations. A director from the arms dealer Valir also told the BBC there were landmines on board. However, a spokesman for Bangladesh's military public relations office told the BBC's Bengali service that the plane contained mortar shells bought from Serbia for the training of army and border guards. The plane, which was due to make stops in Jordan, Saudi Arabia and India before reaching its final destination of Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, was being operated by Meridian, a Ukrainian cargo airline. The crew are understood to have been Ukrainian. Bill Horace, an accused Liberian warlord who fled to Canada, was shot to death in 2020. Now, his alleged killer will appear in court. Can justice ever be truly served? It was the early hours before dawn when Bill Horace and his wife Joyce awoke to the sound of breaking glass. They had been sleeping in their pink split-level home in London, Ontario, which they shared with their children Royce and Kobe, ages 9 and 4, when 4 armed men broke through the basement window. It was Father's Day. A struggle ensued, and shots were fired, with several bullets hitting Horace, who dragged himself outside to seek help. The men ran away after taking $20,000 in cash. He died later in hospital. News of the shooting, in a town of 400,000, about 2 hours from Toronto, made headlines, not just because of the violent nature of the attack but because of the identity of the victim. Bill Horace was an accused warlord in his home country of Liberia. Although he was never charged with war crimes in Liberia or Canada, several people have identified him as a commander in former Liberian President Charles Taylor's army. Taylor was convicted of crimes against humanity in the neighboring country of Sierra Leone and is serving a 50-year sentence. At first, many wondered if the shooting had been retaliation for Horace's alleged past sins. Instead, police believe that Horace had become embroiled with criminals in his adopted country, and that he died as a result of his entanglement with a network of fraudsters. They have charged Kieran Gregory, 23, with second-degree murder. The other 3 accused remain at large and have not been publicly identified. Although it remains unknown exactly if Kieran knew Horace, records show both men have a controversial past. Kieran is the son of a veteran Toronto police officer, and investigators claim he got his father Trevor Gregory to use his police connections to look up Horace's address after Horace allegedly took money from him. Trevor Gregory pleaded guilty to breaching public trust in April. Kieran will next be in court on the 18th of July, when he is expected to enter a plea. Massa, Washington. a veteran journalist who served as a commissioner on Liberia's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, told BBC Focus on Africa that Mr. Horace was one of the most notorious of Taylor's generals. As a commissioner, she heard testimony from victims of human rights abuse during her country's brutal civil wars. He was alleged to have committed some of the most atrocious crimes that you could imagine: murder whole families, shot people to death, behead people, she said. His men were involved in the rape of women, opening of pregnant women's stomachs. Little is known about Horace's childhood. He was born around 1971 and fled his hometown of Buchanan in 1990 when the National Patriotic Front of Liberia, NPFL, a rebel group led by Taylor, advanced on the area. According to reporting from Rodney C. for Front Page Africa Online, although it's unclear when he joined the NPFL, said that in 1993, Horace commanded a group of NPFL soldiers and took part in a massacre. They came and accused us of looting and therefore said we should be executed, John Harmon told Maclean's in 2010. 21 were executed in all fashions. They were shot. They were beheaded. Some were nailed to the cross, like my brother, Steve. He was nailed to the cross and then later shot. Ms. Washington said Horace was named in the Liberia's Truth and Reconciliation Commission's final report and it was recommended that he face prosecution, but he was never charged. To date, no one has ever been convicted in Liberia of war crimes committed in that country. In 2002, Horace moved across the ocean to Canada, where he applied for refugee status. That status was eventually denied, but he remained in the country, appealing his removal several times. In 2009, he applied for permanent resident status, but at the time of his death, he was not a permanent resident, according to Maclean's. In the 2010s, the Canadian Centre for International Justice, CCJI, tried to get the government to bring war crimes charges against Horace. Matt Eisenbrandt, who was legal director of the CCIJ at the time of its investigation, told the BBC he gave Canadian police a mountain of evidence on a silver platter, including the testimony of over a dozen witnesses who described horrific crimes allegedly committed by Horace and his soldiers. But the government never brought criminal charges, pursuing an immigration case instead. Genevieve Gruel, a spokesperson for Canada's Justice Department, said it does not comment on the existence of war crimes investigations unless charges are brought, in order to preserve the integrity of the process and the privacy of those involved. Citizenship and Immigration Canada also declined to comment. If the horrors of Horace's past followed him across the sea, they mostly remained in the shadows. He had 5 children in Canada, including 2 with his wife Joyce, whom he married in 2010. He also has 2 daughters that live in Sweden. A lawsuit has been filed on behalf of her and his family against the Toronto Police Services Board, former police chief Mark Saunders, Trevor Gregory, Kieran Gregory, and 3 unidentified assailants in his attack. In the statement of claim, obtained by the BBC, the lawsuit describes the Horaces as a close-knit family who spent every weekend together, And Horace himself is a loving father and devoted husband, who cooked for his children, took them on family vacations and to sports activities. The lawsuit, which was filed in 2020, is asking for $775,000 in damages due to the emotional and financial loss of Horace as a breadwinner. The suit alleges that TPSB and the former police chief are responsible for the actions of the elder Trevor Gregory. Lawyers on behalf of TPSB, Mr. Saunders and Trevor Gregory, filed a statement of intent to defend. The fraud and counterfeit charges were dropped, and he was found guilty of theft under $5,000 and sentenced to 12 months probation in 2016, according to the Toronto Star. Meanwhile, the police officer's son had racked up a dozen charges, but no convictions, since 2016. While Kieran and his father have been called to court for their alleged roles in Horace's death, those familiar with Horace's past are upset he escaped justice. Canada missed an opportunity to provide some justice for survivors in Liberia, Mr. Eisenbrandt said. Instead, his own violent demise was a damning indictment of the government's failures in this case. And Ms. Washington said, "I don't think is a very good news for Liberians, especially his victims, because justice has not been served in this case. He's dead and gone. He's not going to face the War Crimes Court, he's not going to be able to account on this earth for the wickedness." A union has called for a legal limit on how hot it can be in a workplace ahead of a red warning for extreme heat. The GMB union said workers should not have to contend with temperatures any higher than 25 C, as forecasters predict a record high of 41 C, 106 F, in England. The Met Office's highest warning covers an area including London, Manchester and York on Monday and Tuesday. There is currently no law in the UK or Ireland which states any given temperature is too hot or cold to work. But workplaces should ideally be at least 16 C, or 13 C if the job is mostly physical, according to the Health and Safety Executive, HSE. Responding to the call for a legal maximum, an HSE spokesperson said, "There is no maximum workplace temperature because every workplace is different. Responsibility to make workplaces safe and healthy lies with employers. Workplace temperature is a hazard that comes with legal obligations for employers like other hazards." A number of MPs recently backed a campaign for a legal upper limit of 30 C in most workplaces, or 27 C for those doing strenuous work, but the government does not have to respond. Lindsay Mann, the GMB's health and safety officer, said, "This hot weather is great for being on a sun lounger, but if you're trying to work through it's no joke. Bosses need to do everything possible to keep workplaces cool and, more importantly, safe." She added, "Ultimately, there needs to be a legal maximum working temperature." The GMB union said workplaces should relax dress codes during heatwaves and provide more breaks, water and sun cream. This can be as simple as letting people wear more casual clothing and providing proper hydration. Unbearable, TUC General Secretary Francis O'Grady added, "We all love it when the sun comes out. But working in sweltering conditions in a baking shop or stifling office can be unbearable and dangerous." She said businesses should let office staff work from home or adjust their hours to avoid rush hour travel. The Unite Union has previously said employers have a legal and moral duty to ensure workers' health is not damaged during the current hot weather. It said manual workers were particularly vulnerable, employers should consider rescheduling work to cooler times of the day, and provide cooling areas such as shade or air-conditioned restrooms. If workers show any signs of heat exhaustion, the employer should immediately ensure they stop work and are allowed to recover, without loss of pay. Network Rail and Transport for London have warned people to only travel if necessary on Monday and Tuesday. They have warned customers should expect delays, cancellations and short notice changes to services as a result of the heat. Customers have been advised to carry water with them and not to board trains or buses if they feel unwell. The Purepeches were one of the only indigenous groups in Mexico the Aztecs failed to conquer, but despite that feat, they were nearly lost to history. This is the legacy of our people, my uncle said as we gazed at the pyramids. We were not in Egypt, but rather in the town of Tzintzuntzin, in Mexico's southwestern state of Michoacán. The pyramids, or yucatas, looming in front of us were uniquely round and made of volcanic stone, perhaps the most intact relics of the Purepeches, a pre-Hispanic indigenous group that once reigned here, but that most people have never heard of. In fact, I'd never heard of them either until a few months ago, when I found out that I was a direct descendant. Born and raised in California, I grew up unaware of this part of my heritage as it was lost in my family after my grandfather passed away in 1978. My grandmother was left with 5 kids and no income, but after saving up, she brought my dad and his siblings to the United States in 1983. Under pressure to assimilate, my father disconnected from our Purepecha culture, and it was only recently, when I began to be curious about my identity, that I started questioning him about our past. So in 2021, at the age of 31, he brought me to Michoacán for the first time. That's when I met my uncle Israel, and he revealed that not only were we Purepecha, but that my great-grandmother, Juana, was still alive and living in the small pueblo of Urin nearby. When people think about Mexico before Hernán Cortés, they automatically think about the Aztecs, but what they don't know is that the Purepecha existed at the same time, and they were such a mighty kingdom that they were one of the only indigenous groups in Mexico that the Aztecs failed to conquer. In fact, that's the most common thing people in Mexico know about them, said Fernando Pérez Montesinos, assistant professor of indigenous environmental history at the University of California, Los Angeles. That's a very usual way of referring to the Purepeches and their history, but that's because we know that the Purepeches were as powerful as the Aztecs, he said, explaining that the Aztecs tried to fight the Purepecha in battle, but couldn't defeat them. Standing tall and strong at 4 feet 10 inches, about 1.4 meters. My Purepecha great-grandmother is an elder of the community and lives in a weathered building made of cement walls and humble commodities. She can speak the endangered language, which is a fading trait in a country where Spanish is the official language. Out of Mexico's estimated population of 128.9 million, 124.8 million are native Spanish speakers, whereas only 175,000 speak Purepecha, and they all live in the state of Michoacán. Chatting in Juana's kitchen, I took in everything I could. How she cooks without electricity or a stove. Her rows of dishes made from barro, red terracotta clay, and the deep stone pit in the middle of the room where she was preparing a huge pot of nixtamal, corn kernels processed in a specialized way to make tortillas de maíz. Excited about the new knowledge of my ancestry, I asked her where I could go to learn more about my Purepecha heritage. She stirred the food and gave my uncle a look of authority as she told him in Spanish, "Take her to Pátzcuaro." A day later, we were in the Lake Pátzcuaro basin, me, my uncle, aunts and cousins. staring in awe at these monuments that our ancestors had built to honor deities like their sun god, Kurakoori. Between the 14th and early 16th centuries, the Purepeches dominated western Mexico with an estimated population of more than 1 million. Sinsunsan was their capital, where the Irecha, or ruler, lived. According to Jaziel Aguilera Lara, a geographer and researcher at the National Autonomous University of Mexico, the Yucatas of Sinsunsan, the place of hummingbirds, are the best preserved pyramidal structures in the region. In addition to learning about the Purepecha public architecture, we'll also learn about the way in which the Purepecha understood the world and the importance that Lake Pátzcuaro had for them. The empire chose this area for a reason. The basin is home to a colossal lake with several habitable islands, plentiful fish, and a surrounding landscape lush with mountains blanketed in pine trees. The area is so spectacular that the Purepeches believed the lake was a gateway to heaven. This is a very important region for the emergence of the Purepecha in the pre-Hispanic state of our history, said Sandra Gutierrez de Jesus, an indigenous Purepecha and professor of Latin American Studies and Chicano Studies at California State University, Los Angeles. It was a scenario for gastronomical, cultural and linguistic encounters and exchanges. But when the Spanish arrived at the Lake Pátzcuaro basin between 1521 and 1522, they captured the Purepecha ruler and forced the empire to relinquish its power. Still, as Pérez Montesinos explained, historians consider this transition more peaceful than the siege of the Aztecs. The Purepecha people were given more autonomy than their Aztec counterparts, and Purepecha elites continued to have influence and authority over the region. Nothing could be done without the permission or allowance of Purepecha elites, Pérez Montesinos said. The traditional way to see things is that the Spaniards came and did as they pleased. But what we know now is that the Spaniards always had to ask and negotiate with Purepecha elites in order to remain themselves on top. One example he gives is the Basílica de Nuestra Señora de la Salud, constructed in Pátzcuaro around 1540. The conventional knowledge is that Bishop Vasco de Quiroga built that cathedral. But it was built by Purepecha hands, said Pérez Montesinos. He explained that the Spanish did not have to use forced labor to construct the cathedral. As the Purepecha community agreed to collaborate and lend their physical labor, there is this very dominant narrative of trying to downplay the achievements of the everyday Purepecha folks by highlighting how it was the Spanish friars who taught them how to make these artisanal works, but in the face of very daunting challenges. The Purepecha incorporated new things into their lives to make something original, he said. As we traveled around the state, I started to see Purepecha touches in the architecture. Since Michoacán is rich with oak and pine trees, the Purepecha Empire became known for its expertise in wood constructions. Their most notable buildings were traditional wooden houses called trojes. After colonization, the Purepecha people incorporated their craftsmanship into the Spanish colonial infrastructure that stands today throughout Michoacán. Since the Purepecha were able to maintain so much autonomy, the three administrative centers of their power, Sinsunsan, Pátzcuaro, and Iguatzio, remained economic hubs during the colonization era. I lived in Pátzcuaro during my childhood and it's the most beautiful place to visit for Purepecha history. There's no other place like it, my uncle told me. When we arrived at the town's Plaza Grande, a celebration of Purepecha culture was on full display, as is the custom every weekend in Pátzcuaro. Teenage boys performed a traditional dance called Danza de los Viejitos, Dance of the Elderly. They were dressed in white, with colorful handmade serapes and straw-like hats that were covered in vibrant rainbow ribbons. They dawdled with canes and donned uncanny masks of elderly men before breaking into a style of Mexican tap dancing called zapateado. This pre-Hispanic dance was originally performed by the elderly as part of a ritual to the ancient gods, but after the Purepecha were colonized, it was used to mock the Spanish, which is why the dancers dress up in comical masks during their exaggerated imitation of old men. Even though the empire acquired tremendous power and left behind this incredible legacy, the Purepecha Empire has largely been left out of Mexican discourse, overshadowed by the Aztecs. That has to do more with how Mexican nationalism came out in the 19th and 20th centuries. Everything is based around Mexico City. And the narrative of Mexican identity was built around mostly the legacy of the Aztecs, Pérez Montesinos said. Also, because there are more narratives of battles, wars and resistance against the Spaniards, there is a lot more material for an epic story, whereas with the Purépechas, you don't have the same type of drama. When I came home from Michoacán, I was a changed person, proud of this newfound knowledge about my heritage, culture and traditions. I was so enthused that I returned to Mexico 6 months later with my dad and sat down with my great-grandmother to pick up where we left off. "Can you teach me Purepecha?" I asked. Juana pointed past me and said, "He can teach you." I turned around and realized she was pointing at my dad. "What? You know how to speak Purepecha?" I asked in disbelief. He laughed and said, "That was a long time ago. I used to know, not anymore." But Juana countered him. "You can teach her," she said. One never forgets, this is our culture. From Bennifer to Benniforever? Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck appear to have gotten married Saturday in Las Vegas. According to several news outlets and a marriage license that appears in a Clark County, Nevada, public record search bearing the names Benjamin Geza Affleck and Jennifer Lopez. It also bears a new name, Jennifer Affleck. "Why not Ben Lopez?" asked Jezebel. That information was good enough for TMZ. People magazine and other entertainment news outlets to giddily break the news Sunday afternoon of marriage for the famous duo, who announced their engagement in April. TMZ and People claim to have copies of the marriage license, and a person close to the couple confirmed the marriage to TMZ. People also reported confirmation of the marriage from an insider, who said of the ceremony, "It was super, super small. Jennifer's mom and kids were there. They just wanted to be married, so they got married." More details were not immediately available. When asked about the reports, a publicist for Affleck told The Washington Post on Sunday, "I have just been reading the reports like everyone else. But the legal union has been a long time coming." The pair originally met in the early 2000s on the set of Geely, which, for film critics, was essentially a movie version of Clay Pigeons. They soon became engaged. While the movie became a box office punchline, Bennifer became a cultural phenomenon. People were obsessed, and heartbroken when they cancelled their 2003 wedding. The Bennifer reunion is the ultimate gift for our nostalgia-obsessed culture. The couple rekindled their romance in 2021 as divorced parents, to the world's continued fascination. Lopez, 52, has been married 3 times, to Ojani Noah, Chris Judd and Mark Anthony, and has 14-year-old twins. Affleck, 49, was married to actress Jennifer Garner, whom he divorced in 2018. They have 3 children. When the couple got back together, the Post's Emily Yar wrote of the feelings it stirred up in longtime fans. Looking back, the cultural phenomenon that was Bennifer really did feel like an all-consuming, inescapable storm. The couple could barely go anywhere without being photographed. The lead-up to their ultimately cancelled 2003 wedding was described by one news outlet as a week of media frenzy worthy of D-Day. As actress Mindy Kaling, who parodied Affleck in her breakout stage production, reminisced in her first book, Bennifer was so big it was as though two people had never been in love before. And they had discovered it. So imagine everyone's delight when Bennifer re-emerged from the gloaming after Lopez split with fiancé Alex Rodriguez. Lopez announced the re-engagement in her newsletter and described Affleck's proposal. "Did you ever imagine your biggest dream could come true?" she wrote, according to People. "Saturday night while at my favorite place on earth, in the bubble bath, my beautiful love got on one knee and proposed. I was taken totally off guard and just looked in his eyes, smiling and crying at the same time, trying hard to get my head around the fact that after 20 years this was happening all over again. I was quite literally speechless, and he said, 'Is that a yes?' I said, 'Yes, of course that's a yes,'" she later told the magazine. "It's a beautiful outcome that this has happened in this way at this time in our lives where we can really appreciate and celebrate each other and respect each other. We always did. But we have even more of an appreciation because we know that life can take you in different directions. This go-round, it seems as if the couple went through with it. Second time's the charm." As Affleck suggested in a Wall Street Journal magazine profile in December. "I've had second chances in my career. I've had second chances as a human being. Life is difficult. And we are always failing and hopefully learning from those failures," Affleck said. "The one thing you really need to avail yourself of the opportunities provided from that growth is the second chance. I've definitely tried to take advantage of that. I haven't always been successful, but in cases in which I have, they've turned out to be the defining aspects of my life." An asteroid the size of a skyscraper will pass Earth Sunday, making its closest approach to our planet in almost 100 years, according to NASA. Asteroid 2022 KY4 is between 220 and 492 feet in diameter, and it travels at an estimated 16,900 miles per hour. KY4 is considered an Amor-class asteroid, meaning it orbits between Earth and Mars. NASA says the giant rock will miss our planet by about 3.8 million miles. In the past, the rock has made close encounters with Earth, most recently in 1959. After Sunday, we won't see it this close until May 2048. It still reaches NASA's classification of potentially hazardous because it orbits within 4.7 million miles of Earth and measures greater than 140 meters in size. There are no asteroids that currently pose a significant risk of impacting Earth within the next 100 years. According to NASA's Planetary Defense Coordination Office. Meanwhile, one of the most popular meteor showers, the Perseid meteor shower, is underway. While it won't reach its peak until August, you still have the chance to see dozens of meteors streak through the night sky, as long as the moon isn't too bright.